Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Afro Boss Lady Show. This is your host, Jenny, and today we have a special episode. We're really going to be talking about domestic violence. There have been a lot more cases of domestic violence. Many women are complaining. Some women are actually calling the police, but so many of them cannot get help because of the lockdown that has been instructed. So we want to talk about this. I made a previous video on my channel just to introduce the topic. I also conducted a survey and I had many people that participated. And I just wanted to go ahead and thank you all of you who participated. And we're just going to go ahead. This is going to be the first episode of talking about domestic violence during this pandemic of COVID-19. On here, we have my favorite. I have many sisters, but this one is like the mini me. She currently lives in France, so I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself. So, welcome, Gaby, to my Afro Boss Lady show. Would you just give my viewers and followers just a brief description of who you are and your several platforms? Because you also have a platform on YouTube. So, just briefly describe who you are.
So I'm Gaby. I'm Jenny little sister. So like she said, I live in France. I live in Paris. I'm also on YouTube, so you can find me on YouTube at Gaby Endo and So. I'm also on Instagram, also at Gaby Endo and So. So I'm representing for the endometriosis sisters. That's why I started my channel. My way of life is Gaby Endo and So, like endo and so what, like endo is never gonna stop me. So I find like every feminine topic is very dear to my life as well, so I'm very glad to be a part of this conversation.
We're actually happy to have you here. I've had, I think one of the videos that we did, I want to say last year, that we already have you here, and many people were actually inquiring to actually know more about you and your journey to endometriosis. So I'm glad to have you back here. This is my first video interview, so I'm happy that it's happening with you. So let's get started. On the topic of domestic violence, I conducted a survey. I think it's been a couple of weeks now, and I had tremendous answers and people who actually participated. I mean, it was really overwhelming, guys. And many of them have left comments that I actually want to go through those comments and have us discuss and give our perspective, different perspective. So let me pull the statistic. So one of the questions on the survey was, what do you believe is the main reason women stay in abusive relationships? And I had 50% of women or anybody who participated actually said it's children.
Wow.
50% said it was children. We have 22%, 22.4% said it was financial dependency. 23.7% actually said it's the community. What will other people say? So,
Wow.
and then there's only a small percentage, and I think it's less than 1% or is about 1% of people who actually said women stay in abusive relationship because of love.
Wow.
So I think I was expecting more love.
Mm.
I mean, I knew children would be, I mean, on the top of the list when it comes to most women stay because of children. That's why it's 50% of people say it's children. But I was really surprised to know that most people did not think it was love.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that with the statistics saying it's 50% stay because of children?
I'm surprised because I would have thought financial reason would have been number one. Because when you're in a couple, when you're in a relationship, I believe that having a stable home is easier than
Yeah.
when you become a single parent, or when you become single altogether. So I would have thought financial would have been first, but when you think about children, I think you just
Mm,
have to put yourself in the shoes of the person who's receiving the abuse, because
yes.
for me, I'm having a hard time understanding, like, if you suffer from domestic violence, you don't want your children to be witnessing it. So, but at the same time, sometimes women, even men maybe, that go through domestic violence, they just want their kids to have the two parents together. So
Yes.
I'm guessing that's the reason why. people would just stay because of the children. They want the balance, they want to have the happy home, happy
Happy
family.
home.
Yeah, but I'm really, really surprised, and even more that love is the last one. Surprising.
It's really surprising. I was surprised
Yeah.
that love wasn't, like the top
Yeah.
three and it was at the bottom. But it's really surprising because I mean, a friend of mine actually years ago, the mom divorced, but the mom actually said out loud, to her kids, it's time for me to divorce, because all her kids were actually 18 and plus. So she felt like I didn't have to pretend anymore because I wanted to give you
Wow.
guys a good home. So I
Wow.
still remember that example of that woman actually going through domestic abuse, and she decided to remain in it because she wanted to give her children that balance of having mom and
Yeah.
dad. And yeah, but I think more time than often, what I also found out is that children that actually have to experience domestic abuse, regardless whether parents think it's healthy, they actually come out of that, come out of that experience feeling more, I want to say, more damaged. Friends of mine that have grew up in relationships where mom and dad, were fighting all the time. That dad was always, putting their hands on the mom. And one of my girlfriend actually, now she's a married woman, and she's going through the same story and
Wow.
the same event that her mother actually experienced. And I
It's
remember,
crazy.
it's crazy. That's why I say it's really detrimental. As a girl, you actually believe that, I mean, this is how relationships should look like,
True.
right?
True.
So most of the time they copy, looking at the parents fighting and the dad being abusive. They usually believe that when I have a man, I also have to be, to a certain
Submissive.
extent,
Accept.
submitting,
Yeah.
accepting,
Accept.
because
Yeah.
this is love, right?
This is exact. I
This is
heard that before,
yeah, yeah,
I heard that before, and that's crazy. And
crazy.
in a lot of cultures, I'm not even gonna mention countries, but like I have some friends from different countries, and they're just gonna be like, if your man doesn't beat you, means he doesn't love you. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, this is how they were raised.
yeah.
So it's
It's really
crazy.
sad. It's really sad.
It
But I
is.
wanted to go ahead and give and just read some of the comments that I received. One of the comments say people need to be more educated. Most people do not really understand what it means to be abused,
Yeah.
and they don't really accept some sort of domestic violence as part of life. I'm just trying to read exactly how she wrote it. So what do you think people think? Because most of the time I also believe that people, when you say abuse, they look at, did he hit me?
Mm,
What was I physically hurt? Like, did he
yeah.
actually put his hand on me? But there are other types of domestic abuse.
True.
So from your experience, like having people, I mean, you lived in many countries. So from your experience, do you actually believe that people do not really quite understand, whether it's men or women, they do not understand the definition of being abused? What is an abusive
No.
relationship?
True. Yeah, I think first of all, yeah, it will be very important that people understand what falls into domestic violence, being in an abusive relationship, being in a toxic relationship, because oftentimes we undermine it, like, and
Mm,
people don't see the gravity of the relationship they are in, and it has to be somebody else telling them that, wow, but that's unacceptable, and
mm-hmm,
then it just hit them, and they're just like, wow, actually is. So I just feel like, yeah, people really need to educate themselves, because I was just reading through actually what are some of abusive domestic violence relationship criteria. And for
mm-hmm,
example, you have to think about if somebody pushes you, trips you down, spit on you, throw stuff at you, um and beat you up. All of this falls onto domestic violence, domestic abuse, people swearing at you, calling you names. It all comes into it. Manipulation,
mm,
like sometimes people don't really realize all the criteria that comes into play when it comes to abuse. And as long as people don't understand them, they will keep on accepting them because
mm.
they don't have the knowledge. So we really need to pinpoint and explain so people can realize that I shouldn't accept that. This is not part of love. this is not normal. This is not part of a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's really important because I think most people, I mean, I've had to have those conversations with, men that I know of, some of my friends, my coworkers, and it's really amazing. Anytime I always talk about domestic violence, they always ask me, "Oh, he was beating her," as if that was the only
Yeah.
thing that was
Exactly. It's
like that
true.
was considered domestic violence.
It's
Um,
true.
I I think all of us to a certain extent have been through a relationship where we felt abused, but we accepted the treatment because
Very true.
the way we grew up was acceptable. It was the norm, right? So from my experience, I don't think I was personally abused, whether it's physically or any shape or form. But I remember dating a guy, and I'm really outspoken. I'm not gonna hide. I'm not gonna shy away from a good conversation or a good argument. And I remember I was younger. I was still in my 20s, and I remember I was talking to him and telling him, basically, I think I just hurt his ego because I was trying to tell him that he should have done better. He could have done better, and that he needs
Mm,
to actually prepare himself because he was looking for a job. He needs to prepare himself. And I was really, quote unquote, an expert at, revamping resumes, people's resumes. That's what I was doing. So, and I remember at the time when I had that conversation with him, he told me, because he was also from Cameroon. So he told me, geez, he said, if I mean the look on his face, that's the day I knew, okay, if this thing go further, this guy is gonna become that type of man. But
wow.
the way he
Yeah.
said it, he basically told me, if we were in Cameroon, you wouldn't talk to me this way, right?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I remember thinking like, what you mean if we were in Cameroon, you wouldn't
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah. It's
talk to you this
crazy.
way. And because I could tell he was angry, but I'm also somebody who always talk about that, like upfront when I'm, entering a relationship or talking, or even, just platonically talking to a guy. I'm always somebody who talk about certain topics. I don't care if it makes you uncomfortable because I want to know your state of mind. And having him say that, I was like, uh-oh. I'm
Yeah.
somebody who actually aspire to go back to Cameroon or aspire to even invest in Cameroon. So at the time, I was like, this is not the man I want to have, because I
Mm,
could see his anger. And it wasn't just one time, it was several
yeah.
times. But because we were living in the US and in a society where you can't really do certain things just like you would do in Africa, so
Mm,
it kind of blocked him, and he knew the type of woman that I was, so he wasn't
yeah.
gonna he wasn't gonna try. But have you also, in your own experience, had a relationship where you felt like you were either abused or going towards that road if you actually let
You're
him?
putting me on the spot. No, first of all, to respond on what you were just saying, you pinpoint the red flag straight
Hmm.
away, and I just think that as women, that's stuff that we ignore, like the signs from the early stages,
Mm-hmm.
because as much as an abuser can hide his flaws, a lot of times he's going to show us signs, but we're just
Mm-hmm.
going to ignore it. So that's very good that you could analyze him and just be like, oh, let me just keep my distance because
Mm-hmm.
this one, if I let him.
And I
So
could
yeah.
actually tell that he was, because some people don't talk much. So when they get angry, you can already tell. And I could tell he
Yeah.
was, if we were in a different environment that would actually allow those type of treatment, I knew he was going to put his hand on me. So
Yeah.
but we never got there because he knew exactly that he wasn't in that environment, and knowing
Yeah.
how Jenny was, I was going to be like, nope, you're not going to do this. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think realizing and noticing, because sometimes we fall in love and we don't see the red flags, we don't pay attention to it. And I was in love, right? And
Yeah.
but I think we need to really pay attention to it.
We need
So
to.
yeah,
So yeah, when it
yeah.
comes to me, if you have to talk about me, look, I've been single for almost 3 years now. My my last
Yeah.
relationship very well. It was a disaster. And I think I took all this time to sit down and look back at it, not to make the same mistake. And I was definitely in an abusive relationship. But when I was in that relationship, I couldn't see it. But looking back, it was like, it was never physical. And that's the thing with abuse. When it's not physical, you actually don't think it's that bad, or you try to blame it on yourself. You try to think like it's your fault. So and my mistake was actually to ignore the red flags, because when you have to look up abusive or toxic relationship, they talk about all the things that I went through. The relationship that everything moves so fast, everything gets so intense. Like, we moved in together very quickly, we got engaged very quickly, and as soon as we moved in together, things just went downhill. But things that I could have pinpointed from the beginning, like the controlling ways, like telling me I should change the way I was dressing now that I was in a relationship, because I was always that girl wearing crop tops and leggings. And as soon as I got in a relationship, it was not acceptable anymore. And I was just thinking, oh, I'm a fiance now, I need to tone it down. No, I don't need to tone it down. That's how you found me. That's the way I am. If that's how I'm comfortable, you should accept me and not make me feel bad, because especially make you feel bad, like, oh, but at your age, you still want to dress like this. Do you see what I mean? And so it was just the type of thing that I was just thinking bad of myself and trying to change the ways that I would dress. And it will make me unhappy. So that's them little things. Or calling me 10 times a day. Like, I had so many episodes, and I don't want to take ages of talking about it, but my ex used to do things like, I would be at home and he would call me from work and I will miss the calls. And the workplace was not very far from where we used to live. 20 minutes later, he would be at home. He would tell at work that he was sick just to come home to see why I was not picking up the phone. Yeah. And I was just thinking, and he would just be like, oh, I was worried about you. I was thinking maybe something happened. No, you just wanted to check if somebody was in the house. But that's only later on that I actually realized that
when
that
you
was
look back,
so bad. That was so bad.
Wow.
And so that was this kind of stuff. Like, we used to live in Ireland, and then I wanted to move back to the UK, and he told me, if you move back, I'm gonna kill myself. Like, he literally said that to me.
God. Reverse psychology, like you are the victim, but he uses he wants, like, he acts like he's the victim, so that it feel bad for him. So
so that was very bad. And you always have this stupid arguments when you would just argue about anything and everything, when at the beginning everything was just perfect, roses and stuff like that. So definitely it was an abusive relationship, like, and it's just like, it's draining you. Like, you don't you're in your own house and you don't have a peace of mind. I can definitely understand what so many women can be going through at the moment when you have to be with someone 24/7. It can be very daunting. Like, you don't feel comfortable. You feel stressed. Everything that you're going to do, you don't know if it's going to create an argument, if it's going to create some tension. So I can understand that it's skyrocketing, the amount.
It's really getting worse. And for all women who are watching, like, you have to really know who you are first. You have to know who you are, because most of the time, those men that are considered abusive are always going to come with a way to tell you you are not wife material enough because you don't dress this way. I think us women, to a certain extent, if you are mature enough, you know exactly how to respect your own body, right?
Exactly.
So there are certain things in certain environment, you will not go to an office, to a business meeting with some, some like cropped up or whatever. You will not go to a business meeting like that. But I think men who are considered, or who are on that abusive spectrum, always tend to tell women what to do, the way they should talk, like the way they should walk, like the way they should dress, like, oh, you're putting too much makeup. I like natural women. But they're the first one.
all of a sudden.
But they are the first one who will go out there and actually hit on the women with full blown beat face, whatever. I don't like you wearing weave and wigs, but at the end of the day, they are attracted to those women wearing wigs and weave. But there is a line. There is a
Yeah,
line to being jealous and being overprotective.
exactly.
That she shouldn't even talk on
Definitely.
the phone. Um, I had that too. You always talk to your girlfriend. Why you always talking
Yeah,
to your girlfriend? So it's really ridiculous. And I can just feel for the women who are going through. I mean, first of all,
yeah,
they were already going through it, and to now have the lockdown and not be
yeah,
able to like get out of the house. I mean, that's on its own. That's ridiculous.
yeah,
So many women. I mean, there's been so many cases of people divorcing, so many cases of people calling the hotline to actually report
yeah.
violence at the home. So we're just gonna pray and feel for them. But we are on here on this platform to educate all of you that domestic violence does not just start and stop at somebody putting their hands on you. There are so
Definitely,
many forms of domestic violence, and we also have to be educated on the subject matter. We also have to be educated on what is acceptable and what is not. Your
definitely.
mom may have lived something, doesn't mean you have to repeat the cycle. The whole Africa is basically patriarchal. Even in the US, right? Even in France where you live,
Yep.
we have a patriarchal society,
Society. Yep.
but they are more prominent in some environments. So if you go
True.
to Africa, for example, like this is not even a conversation people will be having
True.
because it's acceptable by the norms. And that's something that we have as women, we actually have to take a stand and start fighting
Mm.
against it, because I don't think men are going to be the one changing it. We have to be the one being the
True.
change makers. So a comment that one of the lady that participated in the survey, what she said is, I think domestic violence can be reduced or even stopped by all women, because this is the sex, I guess you want to say gender, this is the gender mostly violated. Investing in their lives and doing something that can help them earn a living is going to be a great thing. So what do you think about women, because one of the statistic, I think it says 24% actually stay because of financial dependency.
Yeah, I can totally understand that part. Because when it comes to me, like when I was in that relationship, at some point during the relationship, I lost my job, and I was just thinking, oh my God, like if I leave, I'm gonna have to start everything all over again. What am I going to do? So that's why I was very surprised that it wasn't the first. And I just think that really a lot of time you're gonna stay in this type of situation because you feel like you are stuck. You were
Mm.
talking about also about the opinion of others, yeah, and
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's also a big factor.
yeah.
Oh yeah, you're leaving this relationship. What did you do? Because all the blames comes on the woman most of the time. You were not able to keep your relationship. You
Mm.
wasn't able to sustain the household. So there is a lot of pressure on the woman, but I just feel like it's like we say all the time, especially on your platform, like, and I think that's really the goal of your channel. Women need to be independent and needs to be making a living on their own. It doesn't even matter what you do, but you need to have a little bit of something just in case, because you cannot be depending on anybody, whether it is men, a family member. You just have to have something because you never know what can happen in life.
Mm.
And I just feel like if you feel like you're stuck, especially because you're not working, you don't know how you're going to provide for yourself or for your children. That might be a big reason why you will stay in an abusive relationship. So yeah, women really need to work on that, and that will help stop, but that will not be the only thing. That's not the only reason, because even the survey said that
Mm.
financially was not the top reason. Because I just think like there's so many things that comes into play. I just feel like one of the main reason, well, that I think women come into abusive relationship and stay into abusive relationship is low self-esteem.
Mm.
I think that's a really, really
Mm.
big reason. When you don't know your worth, you feel like you can just accept anything.
Anything.
And I just think that that's the thing that we need as women to work on, knowing that no matter what you are, who you are, and which stage you are in your life, you shouldn't accept abuse. You shouldn't accept disrespect, because a lot of time you're so, sometimes when you are desperate,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be for so many different reasons. I know I was in a time and place in my life when I entered this relationship when I was desperate for a family. I really wanted to settle down and starting to have kids. And the story came up later along the line that I'm suffering with infertility. So that's something that I had to work
Mm.
within myself. Do you see what I mean? Like, some women, it would just be, they just want the title at any cost. They just want to be a wife. Some women, they just want to be a mom. Some
Yeah.
women, they just need a man to tell them what to do in their life. It would just depend. Some women, they just think that they are not worthy. So any man that loves them,
It's
that
like,
will take it.
thank
So I just
you.
think that the
Mm.
first thing that we need to work on is self-worth. That teaching women from young that you are
Mm.
worth it, and your life doesn't stop as being in a relationship. And apart from telling women that they need to know their worth, we need to educate the boys, we need to educate the men.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
not okay to abuse women. This is not okay to play with other people's mind, to manipulate, like to lie, to cheat, to beat up. This is not okay. I think that we need to teach them from a young age that being a man, being the head, being
Mm-hmm.
the leader doesn't mean using your strength, using your mind to trick or to threaten others. I think that's really what we need to teach them, because there is something somehow that's actually not working. The
Mm-mm.
dynamic is not correct. So I think education, like teaching each and everyone that they're worth it, and they don't need somebody else to be complete. We are complete
Mm-hmm.
on our own. So I
Yeah.
think it really starts there. The financial is a big one, but I just think that first of all, bringing everybody's self-esteem up will be the best thing to do. So
You have to know who you are. You have to know what
yeah,
you worth. You have to know what you bring to the table. Because in not knowing who you are and what you bring to the table, you just open the door to anyone and
very
everyone.
true.
So I'm 150% agreeing with you. Like, before we actually educate people as to what is domestic abuse, we have to actually boost the self-esteem. The women, dads, who are parents, it's really something that you need to ingrain in your kids, because
Yeah,
many people grow up with the mindset of, this is what my dad used to do. He never taught me otherwise. I'm just going to redo the same thing.
exactly.
So that's what I was talking earlier about women who stay in abusive, I mean, no women, kids, children who
Yeah,
actually live in those abusive relationships, when they see their parents fighting, on being, emotionally or psychologically or physically abused, those kids usually come out from those relationships being either the abuser or the
mm,
person being
yeah,
abused. Most of the time, they always ask women, why would you stay in an abusive relationship? And they can give reason, children, this and that. But even when they get that financial, independence, many of them are still feel like, maybe I should
exactly.
still stay, because if I've gone just far, you
Ex-
know,
Oof,
like
this one, I invested so much of my
I
time.
invested.
I
So now
cannot
it's
just
like,
go. Yeah,
I already know what he's capable of.
yeah.
So it's better to stay with the devil that you know than the angel
True,
that you don't
true.
know.
Oh, this one. I
Mm,
think women, we need to stop. We need to stop this. We need to
mm,
really stop this, because I think sometimes we are our worst enemy. Like, I'm not
mm-hmm.
talking about women to women. I'm talking about on our own, within ourselves, like in our own head. Sometimes we just think, oh, I can't do anything without him. Mom, yeah, when you talk about our moms, when I broke up with my ex, she said, thank God, I would never tell you to leave your man. You had to make that decision on your own. And she was right, because she said, thank God, I could never tell you to leave your man. You had to make that decision on your own. Because she told me something which is very true. Sometimes when people tell you this man is not good for you, you hang on to him even tighter.
Tighter.
So sometimes you just need to let go. Like, I think we really also need to teach women that if the relationship fails, this is not your fault.
But for those women who are our friends, all of you may have a girl, somebody that you know is being in an abusive relationship, or even
Sometimes
a
it's
guy.
yourself.
Yeah, sometimes it's yourself. And it doesn't, I mean, from our experience, it doesn't matter if people tell you, right? You have to get to that place where you say,
You
it's
do.
time for me to leave.
Enough.
Yeah.
Enough.
It really took me a while to really understand that it doesn't matter what I had to say. She has to make the decision on her own.
Yeah.
And some of them had made that decision, and some of them are still in that situation.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can do, right? All I
No.
can do is be that supportive friend who is like listening
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
you. But yeah, so it's really unfortunate, but that is what is going on.
Yeah.
Another long comment. That will be the last one that I'm gonna do. And then we're gonna wrap things up. This person says domestic violence should be abolished. Women that are victims don't know how to get out of it. And most of the time, it's either because they think they are loved by the abuser, because he apologizes every time. Sometimes it's because of financial need that she stays. I believe that children nowadays are the reason why women are able to leave, which was not the same back in old days. Women were staying because of children, because of the look of the family and society. What would people say? She asked. And now with the confinement, report says that domestic violence has risen up. So that's her comment. That's the last one we're gonna go through. But basically, she says exactly. I think we covered
Yeah.
all of these things. But she said something like, I believe that children nowadays are the reason why women are able to leave, which was not the case back in the days. Do you think women nowadays are more likely to leave relationship just for the sanity of their own children, or is still
Is nowadays, like you said earlier, now we know that kids that have lived through their parents, domestic violence, they either repeat the cycle, becoming an abuser, or they suffer domestic violence. So I just think that's why when moms realize this, when they see that's going around, they don't want their kids to witness this. So they just decide that because of them, they have to leave. Like you said, like if you see your mom getting abused all the time, you would just think that it's part of a relationship. So I
yeah.
think as a mom, like that's not the example you want to give to your daughter. That's not the example that you want to give to your son. So you just rather remove yourself from this type of situation for the sake of them, so they don't have to grow up through this. They don't have to see you suffer, and they don't have to think that it is the norm. So I think this comment is very, very right. Before, women, they didn't have all this information,
Yeah.
and before we were very, very much more conservative, so the family had to stay together. Now we know that people can co-parent without living together, and sometimes it works more for certain people. So I just think that now women can, have more freedom in that
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
definitely. But yeah, domestic violence, abuse, everything, it should be abolished. It's just sickening. Like, women cannot keep on being scared. And obviously it's not
I'm
only
telling
women
you.
suffering from domestic violence, but we are women, so we can only advocate for ourselves. And I just feel like we're always at a disadvantage, and you cannot be in your house. There is a pandemic going on outside and you are still scared, you still not feel safe. It's not acceptable. So we need to talk about these things so women can stand up and know that there are solutions. Like, there is a way out. You are not stuck. Like, you can succeed if you leave this relationship. Like, don't think that this is the end of the road for you. Like, these days there are numbers. You can call the police, but there is not only the police, there are associations, there are structures that help women go back on their feet when they are suffering from abuse. So women just need to know out there, like, you are not alone, and don't wait for your man to put their hands on you. That's not the only form of abuse. Like, they're not allowed to, you know, you shouldn't feel threatened in any shape or form in your household. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. I think this is a platform that I'm trying to create to actually put women together in any shape or form. If we can help each other, right? Create like a support system, a mentorship program, so that we can actually be like create like a sisterhood. So for those women who are right now going through this pandemic and being abused, I just want to say we are here. We are here with you. We are here for you. And don't ever feel like you cannot share, because that's also one thing that many, it has been, said, that many cases of domestic abuse are actually not reported. So always feel like you can talk to somebody. If you can talk to somebody who is a family member, because maybe they have a biased, view on your relationship, then talk to other people that may actually, there are so many platforms out there. You can also call the hotline, depending on, domestic violence hotline, depending on the country, the phone number is different. That's something that you can easily find on Google. But I'm going to put the hotline, domestic violence hotline for France, because you live in France. And then I'm going to put for the US. And then whichever country you're from, just make sure you have that support system, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we believe that the support system is our family, but sometimes our families still believe that domestic violence is acceptable. So in that case,
And sometimes you're just not close with your family. Sometimes it
yeah,
happens.
yeah. And sometimes they actually, not to say that they want you to suffer, but because they've been through the same
Oh,
thing, they feel
yeah,
like
yeah, true.
you have to go through the same thing as well.
Yeah, true.
So thank you, Gaby, for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
It was really, I wanted to have this conversation, the first conversation. I wanted to have it with you because I mean, we are sisters, so I know exactly what you've been through in your past relationship. You know a lot about my relationships, and I just wanted to open the conversation talking about our own experience and our perspective on what is currently going on. And I'm hoping that all of you watching this video are actually gonna take a stand in your own way, whether you are a man or a woman. The education does not discriminate against gender. We have to educate each other. So if you're a man
True.
and you grow up in a society where you feel like this is acceptable, start asking yourself the question, maybe I should be talking to another woman to really know if it's acceptable. Because most of the time men want to determine what acceptable and what is not.
True.
If we are the people feeling the pain, then you should be talking to us and asking us, is it acceptable? Do you
True.
feel like it's okay for me to do this or that? I think it's always a communication but men have to be willing to go into that conversation, because women cannot do it without you men, and men cannot
True.
do it without women. So regardless, we preach and we advocate for women's rights. We stand up for women, and we ask them to be more confident, more successful, financially independent. But we have to work with you guys, with men.
Mm.
So in order to thrive in a good society, men and women have to work together. So which, if you guys have any specific topic when it comes to our womanhood, the things that we are going through, let us know, and we're going to make other videos about it. I'm going to have different people on the platforms, so that you can have different perspectives, different opinions. But Gaby, thank you so much. Do you want to say anything at the end? Just, something like a takeaway?
We need more conversation, so I'm glad that you're opening up, and I just feel like it inspires other people to open up. Don't feel ashamed. Like, there is
Mm,
no need to feel ashamed, like, because I just feel like we keep the feeling of guilt and shame, and that's why it's restraining us. So never feel ashamed. There's nothing to feel ashamed of. And yeah, speak up for yourself.
yeah.
That's what's gonna set you free, to
Yeah.
speak up. And subscribe to Afro Ladies channel, because it's going places. Subscribe also to my channel, Gaby and
Gaby and
Denzel,
Doing
on
so.
YouTube. Put my link
I'm
in the
gonna put the link
description
in the
box.
description box.
It's really my pleasure. I binge watch all your videos all the time.
I know.
I tell you all the time, but I have to say on camera, like, you're my inspiration.
Oh,
You're a boss, and honestly, you will
thank
go
you.
places, and I'm very
Thank you.
inspired. So I just
Thank
really, really
you.
hope that everybody feel as inspired as I am.
Thank you so much for watching. And like Gabby said, the last word of this entire conversation was speak up. Speak up about your situation. Speak up if you know somebody who's going through something like that. And I will see you next time. Bye.